Neville, thank you very much, and thanks for asking me to join you in these very nice surroundings, aren't they, for your 10th anniversary. And what a difference a decade makes. A difference in the perceptions of the need to tackle climate change, which we now know more about. And despite the occasional bonkers sceptic in the Sunday Telegraph or papers like that, by and large, the scientific community and the political community have accepted the need to tackle climate change. And we're determined to do that. The good news in this country is there is, I think, cross-party agreement across all three major parties about the need to do this, and that was shown by, in fact, the support given to the Climate Change Act when that was introduced in the last Parliament. And despite the fact that we're concentrating naturally on the economic difficulties which the country faces and all the problems of the Eurozone and everything else, we haven't taken our eye off the ball on climate change and the need for a low-carbon future. And one of the reasons we haven't done so is because investing in a low-carbon future is part of the answer to dealing with the economic situation that we face. Creating growth and cutting carbon are two sides of the same coin. So I want to thank you in the Low Carbon Vehicle Partnership for what you've done over the last 10 years in helping us as a country to move towards the goal of tackling climate change and helping the economy in the process. In particular, I can't mention everything you've done, I'll be here for far too long and I would miss my vote. But in particular, I want to refer to the successful launch and rollout of the colour-coded fuel economy label for new cars, which was an important achievement and show what can be done when government, industry and interested parties work in partnership to achieve shared goals. And that label is now displayed in over 90% of new car dealerships. And that was followed, of course, recently, Neville, by the launch of a similar label for used cars, which is now being distributed by car dealers by our partner companies, HPI and Experian. And the Low Carbon Vehicle Partnership has also played a strong role in delivery of the safeguards to incentivise the use of more sustainable biofuels. And most recently, in the delivery of the DFT's very welcome and well-supported Green Bus Fund, which is accelerating the uptake of low-carbon buses in the UK. So the move to a low-carbon motoring future is well underway, and indeed it needs to be for the reasons which I've given. The reality is that transport is responsible for around a quarter of the UK's carbon emissions, and road transport responsible for 90% of that. So unless we take action on road transport, we simply aren't going to get the savings which we require across the board to meet our very challenging 2050 carbon reduction targets. And of course, let's also not forget that oil is getting harder to find and the price is becoming more irrational and fluctuating more, and it's only going to go one way in the years ahead, which is up. So we have to also, for energy security purposes, deal with that as well. Right now there are over 1 billion vehicles on the planet's roads, and that number's only going one way, and it isn't down. A couple of weeks ago I was in China, and by the way, if you want to see the consequence of not tackling the environment properly, you need to look no further than Beijing, where I was able to experience firsthand particulate levels of 843 when the World Health Organization's safe limit is 50. It wasn't a pleasant experience. But that's partly down to the fact that 10 years ago Chinese consumers bought just 600,000 cars. In 2011 the number of new cars sold in China was close to 14 million. And that is not unique to China, it's happening in other countries around the world as well. So unless we actually tackle the car and the motor vehicle and make it low carbon, then these problems are going to only exacerbate, and that will affect us even if they don't exacerbate here in the UK, because we're dealing with it. Now the good news is the way motor manufacturers are reducing emissions and improving the efficiency of conventional vehicles. I want to pay tribute actually to the motor industry, which has grasped this agenda in the last couple of years, become really serious about it, and is leading the way. And I think we owe a tribute to the motor manufacturers for the way they're responding to this agenda. Average new car emissions of CO2 have fallen 23% since reporting began in 2000. Great work's been done, an excellent example of what can be achieved. The global market for low carbon goods and services is now worth a staggering £3 trillion a year, and that's going to grow to well over 4 trillion during the next decade. So I'm pleased that the UK is harnessing new types of technology and making sure that we are in the vanguard of this new green technology movement, particularly when it comes to green motoring. We've got the opportunity to position this country to be a global leader in the design, production and use of electric and ultra-low emission cars. And it's working. Nissan is building a plant to manufacture its electric vehicles and batteries in the northeast. I'm in no doubt other investors are going to be following that lead. So once again, creating growth, cutting carbon, two sides of the same coin. We're determined to keep giving that signal out for the Department for Transport, and the fact that we're investing £400 million in this Parliament, in supplying electric charge points, in investing in R&D, in giving grants for plug-in cars and plug-in vans, is clearly sending that signal, and the market is responding accordingly. But it's also not just about motor vehicles for the private individual or for the fleet, it's also about public transport as well. I mentioned the Green Bus Fund, and that's what we're backing, a revolution in bus travel with this multi-million-pound Green Bus Fund, now in its fourth round, a scheme that's helped deliver more than 500 low-carbon buses on routes across England. It's also why we're busy on the biggest electrification programme of the railways, at least since the 1930s, when the third rail was put in south of London. We are, the last administration, I have to make this point, electrified 9 miles in 13 years. We're electrifying 850 miles of track. That's the step change that we're engaged upon to electrify the rail network. And it's why we launched a low-carbon truck demonstration trial last year, over £11 million worth of funding to encourage and assist UK road haulage operators to buy and use low-carbon medium and heavy goods vehicles, as well as to develop the necessary refuelling infrastructure. And it's why, through our renewable transport fuel obligation legislation, we aim to reward only genuinely sustainable biofuels, those that deliver greenhouse gas savings and which do not cause undesirable environmental impacts. And if we're able to clearly, with our European colleagues, separate out those biofuels which are sustainable from those which aren't, then that actually helps very much, in my view, the sustainable biofuel industry to grow and prosper. If we don't do that, then there are those outside who will put question marks over biofuels generally. So separating out, if you like, the sustainable from the unsustainable is actually in everybody's interest, including, of course, the interests of the environment. So, with that final thought, can I just thank those who have contributed to your success over the last 10 years, the LowCVP Secretariat for facilitating and helping to drive their work forward, individuals, of course, Graham Smith at Toyota, who chaired the partnership for many years, and who's still an active board member and has played a leading role, I think, in driving the low-carbon agenda. Neville, of course, yourself, who've chaired the partnership for the last 4 years. Greg was around somewhere, who led the partnership for nearly 8 years. I saw him earlier on, so unless he disappeared out for a drink, he's around here somewhere. Other board members, and too many, in fact, to mention, but it's been a great effort. I think you can be very pleased with your first 10 years, and I look forward to being here to congratulate you in the next 10-year period in the same capacity in which I presently serve.